It is the 23rd of June, 1314, and the English army are close. They make their advance from Falkirk to Stirling. They're closer than ever now to the Scots army. Robert the Bruce is defending the entry to the new park at Milton Ford. In the great English van, led by Gloucester and Hereford, a young, impetuous, ambitious knight, Henry de Bohun, with his squires and a contingent of Welshmen, are ahead. Bohun sees Bruce, sat on a small palfrey, addressing his men. He sees him, charges, lowers his lance with murderous intent, and as he hurtles headlong towards Bruce, at the last dying seconds of that encounter, Bruce rises up in his stirrups, avoiding the lance, and brings his great battle axe down on Bohun's head, clefting it in two, leaving him slumped, lying on the ground. And what would go into the history books as a great encounter, a duel even, between the King of Scots and the young English knight, would preserve them for all time. A great story, but it didn't happen that way. That version of the story comes from the epic tale The Bruce, written by John Barber. The Bruce was written 63 years after the battle. There is another slant to that story. I won't call it a version, because this was written in the year 1314, within the year of the battle. It's written from the life of King Edward II, the Vita Edwardii Secundi, and they tell it a little differently. Bruce's objective is to defend the entry to the new park. Now, that entry is here, just beyond, at Milton Ford. And the English know this. It's the only crossing point for about a mile either way along the Bannockburn. Otherwise, the escarpments and the embankments are far too steep for heavy cavalry. Henry de Bohun is out in front, pressing ahead with his Welsh contingent and with his squires. He is out in front. He knows that the Scots are near. They have battle in their blood. He is ready to go to war. This is the main road to 1314. This is the only route through to St Ninians and beyond to the castle. It is narrow. It is a bottleneck. Only 4 or 5 knights maximum can get down here at any one time. What you see ahead of you there is the ford over the Bannockburn, the only passable place for a mile each way. As Henry de Bohun approaches the ford, he will race over here on his horse in a big plume of spray, for what he sees on the high ground over there is movement among the trees. The Scots schiltrons are silently, quietly lying in wait in their thousands. Bohun races up this embankment towards the camera. He suddenly realizes he is in a world of trouble as he encounters all the spikes. He rears up his horse. He turns. Bruce sees him and races after him. Bruce pursues him in a panic as he rushes back to relate word to the commanders that he has engaged the Scots. But he does not make it. Just before he reaches the Bannockburn ford here, Bruce catches up with him, and from behind he raises his battle axe and brings it down on his helmet from behind. And Henry de Bohun falls dead. His squire is overwhelmed and overcome by the Scots and killed with him. Probably a few others as well. And then it would not be long before Gloucester and Hereford would follow far behind him. They would also cross here. Gloucester himself would be unhorsed. The Scots would be repelled. We're told by the sources that the English were met roughly by the Scots, and this is where they received their bloody nose. This is the killing grounds of day one of the battle. The Scots high up on the hill there in their impenetrable pike formations under Robert Bruce. The English retreating back down this steep hill, the steep embankment. And Henry de Bohun unable to make it across the river to safety. Sought glory here and met his end in one fleeting moment. There's no doubt about it that John Barbour's tale is an epic, and it's a brilliant tale, and I love it. But I also love the truth, and also love the quest for the truth, and you have to go with the evidence from the sources. And for a source that was written within a year of the battle by people who were there and who have taken accounts from writers who have taken accounts from people who were there also, you really have to go with them. Barbour had a great tendency to inflate, to invent, to make a story brilliant, hence having Bruce on a very small horse, palfrey, making him small in every way, breaking his battle axe and commenting, alas, I've broken my favourite battle axe. But that's not reality, and these things only appear in Barbour's accounts after the battle. The Vita Edwardii Secundi portrays a very realistic scenario with what happened, and a completely understandable scenario when de Bohun rode into those pikemen on that hill up there. He knew that he'd ridden into a quagmire of trouble, and his life was in peril at that very instant. Whether he even saw Bruce is anyone's guess, but Bruce saw him, that is for sure, and Bruce raced after him just before the Bannockburn here, and he ended his life, and that was a great morale booster for the Scots, and a further morale booster when the rest of the English contingent arrived here. And the Scots very successfully dealt with them before they headed off down to the Carse. So that's the true story of Robert the Bruce and Henry de Bohun. No duel, but no less dramatic. You know, there's no doubt about it that John Barbour's work, his epic tale, The Bruce, is a magnificent work. It's great entertainment, and the words are extremely powerful as he puffs up our heroes, and he inflates and he invents a lot. It's a great tale, but that's what it is. It's a tale. There are things in John Barbour's version of the events that only happened that we only hear of 63 years after the fact. We must go with the sources of the day, and the Vita Edwardii Secundi written in the year of the battle, gives a very, very different scene when Henry de Bohun lost his life at the hands of Robert the Bruce. And you can see why as he rides over this ford and he gets onto the high ground over there, and he's met roughly with a large volume, 2,000 to 3,000 Scots pikemen. You can imagine the panic as he rears his horse up and tries to regain his ground, cross back over the ford. He doesn't make it. Robert the Bruce catches up with him. It's debatable even if he saw Robert the Bruce at that time, but Bruce certainly saw him. Follow him he did, catch up with him he did, before he reached the water and cleft his head in two. And it was only a matter of time then before Gloucester, Hereford and the rest of the English vanguard arrived, and they too would be met roughly and given the first bloody nose on day one of the Battle of Bannockburn. That's the story of Robert the Bruce and the young knight Henry de Bohun. There was no duel, but the incident in real life was just as dramatic.